This is Section 1, Human Development. This goes along with Chapter 9. Developmental psychology is concerned with the course and cause of developmental changes over a person's entire lifetime. What does genetic influence mean? There's quite a few historical perspectives, but the most important one we want to look at is Jean Piaget, who was a Swiss psychologist. He saw that nature and nurture are inseparable and interactive in cognitive development. Understanding genetic influence. Behavioral genetics is the study of how genes affect behavior. This research demonstrates that nature and nurture jointly contribute to development in two ways. Nature and nurture operate together to make all people similar in some respects. An example is motor skill milestones occur at similar times for most children due to common genes for the nervous system's motor control and common basic care and nutrition patterns. Nature and nurture also operate together to make each person unique. Different inherited genes and environments underlie variations in personality, intelligence, speech patterns, and so on. What is prenatal development? Prenatal development begins when a sperm fertilizes an egg and forms a brand new cell. Most human cells contain 46 chromosomes, each made up of thousands of genes, which are made of deoxyribonucleic acid, or DNA. New cells are constantly being produced through the process of mitosis. The cell's chromosomes duplicate themselves so that each new cell contains copies of the 23 pairs of chromosomes in the original. But for male sperm cells and female ova or egg cells, meiosis occurs when the chromosome pairs are randomly split and rearranged, leaving each new sperm and egg cell with unique arrangements of 23 single different chromosomes. Conception results in a fertilized cell, the zygote, which carries the usual 23 pairs of chromosomes, but half of each pair comes from the mother and half from the father. The zygote divides first into copies of itself, then it divides and redivides into the billions of specialized cells that form a complete new human being. We look at the stages of prenatal development. The first 2 weeks after conception are called the germinal stage. By the end of this stage, the cells of the dividing zygote have formed an embryo. The embryonic stage begins next, during which time the basic body plan and organs are created. The fetal stage begins after 2 months. The embryo becomes a fetus, and its various organ systems grow and begin to function. Prenatal risks. During prenatal development, a placenta forms and attaches itself to the uterus through an umbilical cord. The placenta acts as a filter through which the embryo or fetus can take in nutrients from the mother and send away waste. The placenta is an imperfect filter, allowing many substances to reach the embryo. Teratogens are harmful substances that invade the womb and cause birth defects. Teratogens are of concern in the embryonic stage because it is a critical period, a time during which certain kinds of growth must occur if development is to proceed normally. Damage can occur if the baby's mother takes certain drugs, is exposed to certain toxins or stress, or has certain illnesses during pregnancy. Cocaine use can result in premature, underweight, tense, and fussy babies who may suffer delayed physical growth and motor development. Nearly half of babies born to women who abuse alcohol develop fetal alcohol syndrome, a pattern of defects that includes intellectual disability and malformation of the face. Consumption of as little as a glass or 2 of wine a day by the mother can affect the infant's intellectual functioning. Smokers' babies may be born prematurely and underweight. They often suffer from respiratory problems, irritability, and attention problems, and they are a greater risk for nicotine addiction later in life. To study newborns' abilities, researchers show stimuli and note where infants look and for how long. Researchers also note changes in heart rates, sucking rates, brain waves, movements, and skin conductance, which is the measure of perspiration that accompanies emotion. Vision is very poor. Newborns can only see large objects close up. Brain areas that process visual information are not fully developed, and researchers estimate that newborns' vision is 20/300. Infants younger than 2 months focus on edges. Later, they're able to scan whole objects. Newborns enjoy looking at faces. A few days after birth, newborns can hear soft voices, locate sounds, and discriminate tones. They prefer rising tones spoken by women and children and high-pitched, exaggerated, expressive speech or baby talk. Hearing is not developed completely until later in childhood. Newborns have smell and taste preferences. They prefer sweet taste, and breastfed babies prefer the odor of their own mothers to that of another mother. Movements during the first few months are dominated by involuntarily unlearned reactions called reflexes. Over 20 reflexes have been observed in newborns, including the grasping, rooting, and sucking reflexes. An absence of reflexes in newborns signals problems in brain development, as does failure of reflexes to disappear after a few months. How do babies think? The development of knowledge, Piaget's theory. Piaget saw the ability to think as growing in a fixed sequence of stages. Children are not miniature adults and with smaller quantity of adult cognitive skills, but children's thinking is qualitatively different. The building blocks of development. Schemas, are the basic units of knowledge that are the basis of intellectual development, are mental images or generalizations that form as people experience the world. They organize past experiences and provide a framework for understanding future experiences. And here is a visual of the 4 Piaget stages: sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete operational, and formal operational. In assimilation, the individual fits a new experience into an existing schema. An example, a toddler may call a butterfly a bird the first time he sees one. In accommodation, the individual modifies an existing schema to better fit a new experience. After seeing more butterflies, a toddler may realize that they are not the same as birds, though they both have some of the same features. She may then broaden her things that fly schema to include a new category called butterflies. Piaget's first stage is the sensory motor development stage. This covers the first 2 years of life, with mental activity limited to schemas about sensory and motor functions. Sensory motor infants cannot form schemas about objects and actions that are not present. They can only think about objects in the here and now, directly sensing or acting on them. This period ends as a child begins to form mental representations, thinking about objects in their absence. Knowing that objects exist even if you cannot directly sense them is object permanence. If a toy rolls behind the curtain, a child without object permanence can no longer think about the toy as if the toy no longer exists. A child with object permanence pursues the toy looking behind the curtain. The pre-operational period, about ages 2 to 7, begins as children understand, create, and use symbols, like language, to represent absent things. They can pretend, draw, and talk. During the second half of the pre-operational stage, children begin to make intuitive guesses about the world, but they cannot tell the difference between imagination and reality. Pre-operational thought is dominated by what a child sees and touches. Pre-operational children are egocentric in that they assume that everyone sees what they see. Children lack conservation, knowing that certain properties of substances, like volume, stay the same even as appearance changes. Children also do not understand reversibility or complementarity. They focus on only one dimension at a time. By the concrete operational period, usually age 7 to adolescence, children develop conservation and the ability to use simple logic and mental operations, including counting, measuring, adding, subtracting, ordering, and sorting. They apply logic only to concrete objects, like trees and books, but not to abstract concepts like liberty. Piaget's formal operational period of cognitive development, which typically occurs in adolescence, marks the ability to think hypothetically and to think logically and systematically about abstract ideas, symbols, and propositions. People who have not gone to school are less likely to exhibit formal operations. Even people with formal operations tend to use such reasoning only in their own domains and not in others. Developmental psychologists believe that cognitive abilities develop at different ages in different areas, and in pockets rather than in large all or none steps or stages. In addition to their general level of development, children's reasonings depend on four things: how easy the task is, how familiar they are with the objects involved, how well they understand the language being used, and what experiences they have had in similar situations. The information processing approach examines how information is taken in, used, and remembered. This approach focuses on gradual, quantitative changes in children's mental capacities. As children get older, their information processing skills gradually get better. They have longer attention spans, their memory storage capacity improves, and they get better at choosing problem-solving strategies that fit the task they are facing. Both nature, maturation, and nurture, experience, are important. Children do better with familiar material. Children learn memorization strategies in school. Culture and cognitive development. Russian psychologist Lev Vygotsky focused on the social world of people and viewed cognitive abilities as the product of cultural history. A child's mind grows through interaction with other minds in the culture. Researchers have studied how social routines, like family dinners, religious services, and birthday parties, affect a child's growing knowledge of how the world works. Quite early, children form scripts or mental representations of the sequences in which routines, activities of their culture should proceed. Cognitive abilities are also shaped by language. It's harder to understand concept if the culture's language has few terms or abstract terms to describe them. Although heredity is an important factor, experience, the environment, also plays a role in cognitive development. Cognitive development can be slowed by conditions of deprivation, such as those resulting from abuse, neglect, poverty, and poor nutrition. Parents can aid a child's cognitive development by exposing him or her to a variety of interesting materials and experiences, supportive conversations, and loving interactions with family members or others, as well as by encouraging the child to take on challenges actively. Project Head Start and other programs for poor preschool children can enhance children's cognitive abilities. Music lessons and electronic games can also promote children's cognitive development. And that is it for Section 1.